Not bad, not bad. That worked out. All right.
Jeffrey got married.
Sandra and Emily, as we all know, are an amazing couple. I remember hearing from Sander. He went off to Neuchâtel, had a great time. Hearing all sorts of wonderful stories when he came back, all this fun he had with his friend Emily. His friend, Emily. All these pictures that he had of all these crazy places with his friend Emily, his friend Emily. And I remember thinking to myself, friend Emily, best friend Emily, best friend female Emily. Let's see how this works out. Sure enough, a little while later, I heard that friend Emily turned into girlfriend Emily, and I am as thrilled as I possibly can be that it's now wife Emily. I love you both very much. So first up for speeches is going to be Molly Steeves. And here we go.
So Jeff already stole all my one-liners. No, I'm just kidding. I wanted to thank, first of all the groomsmen who look so handsome in their tuxes, and yeah, I'm sure Emily and Sander have already voiced their appreciation, but again, thank you from the Steve side of the family. So, yeah, I guess this is a speech to both of you, but Emily and I both had the fortune of growing up in a very, very close-knit family. And we grew up as best friends, and we were only a year and a half apart in age, and so we looked to each other for guidance and examples. And as we got older, our personalities definitely got a little different and distinct, but that only matured and strengthened our relationship. And so when I was 15, Emily embarked upon her Swiss adventure, and somewhere along the line, a friend named Sander started to pop into all the stories, as Jeff mentioned, a friend, Sander. So for my 16th birthday, my parents gave me a trip to Switzerland, and to see my sister. And Emily was so excited to show me all her haunting grounds, you know, where she lived, her roommates, the surf. But more importantly, she was very excited to introduce me to her friend Sander. So when I arrived in the train station in Neuchâtel, Emily was a little late. She had been at the bar. But Emily came up the escalator, and she was followed by this handsome young man who was very clean-cut and was wearing khakis. And I was like, this must be Sander. But in fact, it was Adrian, the best man. And behind Adrian, Sander came up the stairs with long hair and piercings and probably a heavy metal t-shirt on and ripped jeans. And Emily turns to him and says, this is Sander. And I was like, all right, okay. But throughout that trip, I got to know Sander, and Sander proved to me that he cares so much for Emily, and Sander and I became friends. And Sander and I have been friends for, 8 years now? So he's definitely proved himself. And so even then, like I said, there was something between them, even though they may have denied it. And they continued to deny it for several years, many years actually. Several years of phone calls every single night where me and my mom would listen to Emily giggling for like 4 hours. Several years of Sander slaving away part-time minimum wage at Little Caesars so that he could afford to come and fly and visit Emily. Several years of their party antics, and ultimately several years of building an incredibly strong foundation for their relationship. So when the phone call came around Thanksgiving time that Emily and Sander were finally together, I was so happy for them, but not really surprised. As soon as everyone in my family met Sander, we knew that he was the one. So that being said, I had known their engagement was going to happen for quite some time. 6 years before it happened, actually. But even so, it was a huge surprise when it happened. And again, another story in Switzerland. It seems to be a recurring theme in your guys' relationship. My family had planned a trip to see my brother graduate in Neuchâtel. And last minute I decided to join them as a surprise to my brother. When I arrived, my sister and I decided that night we would go and visit the castle that's right on top of the town, and it looks over the lake and it looks onto the Alps, and it's absolutely just the most picturesque place you can imagine in the world. And so she and I planned that just the two of us would go up the next morning. And the next morning when I woke up, I was staying with my parents, and my parents were pretty adamant that I not go meet my sister on time. And I thought to myself, this is a little strange. And so I went into the town with my parents, and Emily and Sander had been up to the castle, and I was a little upset. But Emily and I had made plans, no big deal. We were waiting in the town square, and Emily and Sander started walking towards us, and this bus passed in front of us, and I couldn't see what was happening yet. But then all of a sudden I saw Emily sobbing. And the first thing that crossed my mind was, oh my God, what has happened? Something terrible has happened. And she started walking closer and closer, and she was leaning on Sander for support. And as she got closer and closer, she was still crying and still crying. And my mom seemed uncharacteristically stoic at this point. So I began to grow suspicious. But I asked Emily what happened, and she made this limp little fist, and I couldn't understand what that meant at first. But then I took a closer look, and I saw the ring, and I was just so elated for them. We all burst out into tears. So Sander and Emily, as we said before during the ceremony, have many beautiful examples of strong, loving marriages in their life. Patricia and Sheldon, my mom and dad, Carolyn and Bob, Sander's parents, all of our grandparents, hundreds of years of combined marriages. May your marriage and love serve as an example for their children and us all. May your love continue to grow and change as you do, and I wish you congratulations and lifetimes of joy alongside each other.
Next up, we have Sander's best man, Adrian.